Hey, everyone, it's Isaiah. Welcome, welcome. This is Isaiah, and this is another one of my podcast episode. So, the podcast name, as you remember, is Isaiah's Inspiring Evenings. And today we are recording episode 4 of a special series with Dr. Sheri Elle Brown. Hi, Sheri.
Hi.
And sorry, let me find my notes here. The series is called, it's part of the Things Women Don't Talk About big series, but it's a tiniest series with Dr. Sheri. And the series is called Aligned and Unstoppable, which I love. Conversations with Dr. Sheri Elle Brown. So this episode is episode 3. So if you've missed the other two, go and listen to those. And there's going to be an episode 4. We've just decided, so we're telling you first. The episode 3 is called ZenFlow in Action, Creating a Life and Business from Alignment. But before we go into the topic, let me remind you, you, the listeners, of who Dr. Sheri Elle Brown is. So I'm going to go and read her biography, which is the easiest way for me to introduce her. Dr. Sheri Elle Brown is a spiritual psychologist, abundance mindset mentor, intuitive empowerment coach, life and business coach, human potential catalyst, I love this one always, and the founder of ZenFlow OS. She combines decades of expertise in psychology, energy work, and the multidimensional nature of human potential. She empowers purpose driven individuals to align with their true selves and create lives they love. Her signature ZenFlow OS system bridges spirituality with structure, offering actionable strategies for clarity, alignment, and abundant creation. Whether guiding clients to overcome limiting beliefs, shift into higher vibrations, or intentionally manifest their visions, Dr. Sheri's heart centered approach inspires transformation on every level. Known for her ability to blend science, soul, and strategy, she creates a unique space where personal growth and empowerment flourish. Dr. Sheri's mission is simple: to help you remember who you truly are and thrive as the powerful co creator of your reality. Isn't that a big one? Simple
It's a big
yet,
one.
but it's a big one. But that's all right. We need big ones. We need big missions because we're big grown women, right? So,
Yes, and I think at the end of the day, we're here to powerfully create and really
absolutely.
experience ourselves fully. And I
Agree.
just believe that.
Absolutely. And help others while we do that. So double whammy. So today we're talking about your creation. Mostly we're mostly talking about that, but we know that we might go on a tangent. Just, listeners, bear with us. But our tangents are so fascinating. So, so we're talking about ZenFlow OS. And so the title of the episode is Creating a Life and Business from Alignment. So I'm going to go and ask the stupid questions because I think they're always important. So, what is alignment? How would you define alignment? Because there are some words that are so loaded in the spiritual world and the business spiritual world today, and so many people are either unclear about what does that mean, or they are even wrong, or just not wrong. I don't like this idea, but they are giving opposite definitions. Um, I've read things about alignment that I thought, oh, I disagree with that one. So let me know. What do you think is alignment and how do we get there?
I think the beautiful word alignment is that it is unique to each and every one of us. To me, it's really a feeling. It's really matching of vibration and frequency of what lights you up at the
Mm-hmm.
soul level. And I don't I mean, I could talk about it from an intellectual point of view and give you a prescribed definition, like, and we definitely know the feeling when we are in alignment and when we are out of alignment.
Hmm.
But alignment really is the feeling of embracing who you are, listening to your soul, and listening to that beautiful eternal wisdom and energy that is inside of you. And
Hmm.
we all know when we are aligned because it feels really good. It feels really flowy. And we know when we're
That's a beautiful definition, right? When are we aligned? Well, when we feel good.
when we feel good. And we know, and I mean, when I think about like limiting beliefs and old programming and the paradigms and the stories in which we're raised that can make us feel less than when we are in a program or a belief that is not true for us, but has been a part of our journey since we were very small, and we make decisions coming from old programming and these stories and beliefs that really don't resonate with us. That's the feeling of misalignment. That's
Hmm.
what leads us down a path of dis-ease and, missing out on the magic and the wonder and the beauty of, creating our reality and knowing ourselves fundamentally in a really powerful way.
Hmm. Nice. And so before we actually go into the program, the ZenFlow OS program, how do you think, how do you believe we create a life out of alignment? Um, how do we, how can I say that? Hold on to the alignment feeling? Because it's fleeting, right? For me, at least, when I started feeling it, it was fleeting. This feeling of I feel good, but then something shit happens, and I don't feel that good anymore. So, how can I create a life out of something that is not solid sometimes when we begin with it?
That's such a great question. And I think it's definitely existential in part because I think that part of our human journey is to experience ourselves wherever we are at a moment in time. Whether, how could I say this? I don't want to use the words good or bad or in between. I'll say it a different way. And this kind of leans into this idea of why I talk about things being multidimensional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are multidimensional beings, and we all know, and we've known this for a very long time, that we are body and we are mind and we are soul, which I think is really brilliant. And it's something that we're all aware of and that we know to be true. But I think being human, we compartmentalize like, am I nourishing my body? Am I nourishing my mind? Am I feeding my soul? But we're not necessarily integrating it into a bigger picture of what the nature of reality is all about. And so let me explain what I'm saying. Body, mind, and soul really is three-dimensional, fourth dimensional, and fifth dimensional reality. And so we
Hmm.
humans are energy beings. And so we experience ourselves and our reality in three dimension, the physical, in fourth dimension, the intellectual or the mental energy that makes us who we are. And then the fifth dimensional energy really is that soulful, etheric, expansive energy of the nature of who we are at that level of being and of light.
Mm.
And so, and you and I actually alluded to this in our last podcast, in our last call, when we were talking about, gosh, I want to say that we were talking about the clients that you work with, and sometimes, they kind of want to hang out in that fifth dimensional etheric
Mm-hmm.
energy, and
Yeah.
coming back down into the lower vibration of being physical can seem like a little bit of a drag or definitely heavier energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it is heavier energy. It is being physical is definitely a lower vibration. And so, and you and I actually were talking about how beautiful it is to be in this three-dimensional physical reality
Yeah.
because we get to create art, have a beautiful meal or a glass of wine or sing a song. So a lot of things happen in three-dimensional reality that are wildly magical and very, very unique to this human experience. And
Absolutely.
when we're hanging out in the ethers and in the non-physical, when we're there, we're like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful and expansive and flowy and eternal and perfect. But I kind of want to incarnate one more time because I want to, smell a truffle
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be.
Swimming in
And
the sea.
yeah, and so exactly. And so, I know I'm already getting tangential and I can't even remember the beginning of your question. It
I
really,
can go back to the idea was how do we hold on to the I feel good aligned
there we go.
situation without letting it kind of slip. But at the same time, I know when I'm asking the question that holding on to it is not a solution because it then crystallizes something that obviously is not flowy and
Thank you for
won't flow.
keeping me on track, Isaiah. And so, really, I mean, when we think about it that way, we get to decide if it's okay if we're in three-dimensional reality, because we do deal with our programming, and our part of our programming is fundamental to being human because it's the
Mm,
way that we learn how to be human when we are
yeah.
very, very young. And so, and our parents don't know, how they're programming us because they've been programmed, and it's just the nature of being human. And so I think the question is when we are feeling when we're feeling in that lower vibe, when we're feeling very physical and three-dimensional and we're kind of in that lower energy and we experience self-doubt or we experience this feeling of separateness, it's very easy to feel separate in three-dimensional
Hmm.
reality. We can decide to be in that moment and experience ourselves in physical reality, or we can engage in that fourth dimensional intellectual thinking of what could I do right now to think a thought that will help bring up my vibration,
Hmm.
pull me back into alignment. Or we can even get into that fifth dimensional energy where we just kind of lean back and say, wait a minute, this physical reality is a little bit of an illusion anyway. I'm creating my reality all the time. I am an energetic being. I am always connected, and everything is fine. Everything will get back into flow. I trust, I surrender. So to answer your question in the simplest, most practical terms, the part about being human that if we're thinking about ourselves as mind, body, and soul, or third and fourth and fifth dimensional beings, multidimensional beings, it really is a decision to just lean in a little bit more every day and be intentional about who you are, how you want to live, what you're thinking and believing in every moment. There is no magic wand. It's
Mm,
much more about a journey of coming home to yourself and your true nature at any moment in time
hmm.
and give ourselves permission to experience ourselves in all of these different dimensions without getting attached to any of them.
I feel I'm going to try and rephrase what you said in a very simplistic French type way, and you let me know if that means anything. I feel that what I heard is basically the very first basic advice that you would give is take a breather and just disconnect from the oh how do you call it the guinea pig wheel cart wheel and just kind of go, is this the life that I'm creating? Is this the thing that I want? So first add our minds, our intellects into it, into the mix, and then our soul, which forces us to not be um, engulfed into the physical experience, mostly when the physical experience is shit, basically. uh, And so if I can disconnect from that, sorry, if for people who are just listening, I'm doing a gesture, so this doesn't help. But um, if we can just disconnect from the experience and just kind of look at ourselves from, no, I don't want to say from above, but from the side, that means that we can then act and not react to our life. Does that make sense with what you said,
That
or is
that
it?
that absolutely is true. And I think, with all of the words that have been spewing forth from me, and I know that you are a big fan of being practical. I appreciate that. I think what I was really getting at is stepping into an awareness that reality, three-dimensional reality, and your circumstances are not fixed. And so I think that when we be
Drop.
right? So I think that when we create that awareness, when we get, you know, really, I don't know how else to say this in American English, but when we get really sucked into all the things that can happen, the
Mm,
crazy stuff that can happen to us, I'm using air quotes,
yeah,
happen to us in three-dimensional reality. And I think stepping back and viewing ourselves from 30,000 feet can really give us a much better, bigger, broader perspective and more wisdom about what the heck is actually happening in our physical reality.
yeah. It's if this idea of we are co-creators of our reality with the universe, which is very common in our world, um, and it's also it seems like a huge idea, and sometimes it might feel like very, very complicated. But I think it's also kind of just allowing. It's more about flow than about forcing something. Would you agree with that? That the idea is that we try to stop forcing the reality to become what we desire, and we just allow it. Allow. I'm sorry for my
It is.
pronunciation
No,
here.
that's exactly right. And I actually just made a YouTube video about this not too long ago about stop forcing and start creating.
Mm,
Um, Maybe I'll share my YouTube link with your audience, and then that way they can kind of,
absolutely.
see a little bit of what
Absolutely.
I talk
I
about.
forgot to say that at the beginning of the podcast, so I just say it now, say it again. Every link that you can find Dr. Sheri on will be above or below the audio or the video. Wherever you're listening or watching this, you will have every link to Dr. Sheri's places of hanging and access to a freebie that is a surprise for now. So you will have to go and click on the link to discover which of her amazing freebies she's offering to you today. Yeah, so from force to flow, right? From force to creating. Is that what you were saying? Because I
I
interrupted
am, and
you.
when you were talking about forcing versus allowing, I think I want to share this. Let me see if I can gather my thoughts and not be so sciencey intellectual girl. But I do want to share a little bit of the science because I think it'll
Sure.
help a tiny, tiny little bit in terms of this sort of like abstract idea of how we create our reality. But before I talk about that, what I really want to say is when we live in this three-dimensional physical reality, by the virtue of being physical, we live in a lower vibration than that beautiful, high, expansive vibration of, our souls, for example. And so we're already living in this a little bit of a lower vibration anyway. And when we're in that space in 3D reality, in this physical world, it's very easy to believe what we're seeing and experiencing is this ultimate truth. It feels very fixed. We can feel very separate. We can feel very alone. And that's not the nature of reality, but I think it's the illusion of feeling like that is the case. And so that's when we get in that mode, I believe. And I think I can say this generally. I know that I have been there, where when we're feeling separate or alone or or in lack or whatever that feeling may be, we kind of, as I would say in American English, and I don't know what the French idiom would be, we grasp at straws.
Yeah.
You're right. So
Yeah.
we're grasping at straws, right? We want to force things to happen so we can change what we are experiencing, and it can feel desperate. And that feeling of force and that feeling of desperation or disconnectedness is not a high vibe, lovely, aligned vibration. We're kind of telling the universe, oh my gosh, I'm separate and
Mhm.
I'm not a powerful creator at all. I'm just the victim of my circumstances and my reality. So
Yeah,
that's like the
that's one of
extreme.
my big things. I keep saying that you cannot at the same time pretend to be the creatrix of your universe and a victim of circumstances. It's either or. It's kind of a
Right.
choice, right?
I agree. It is either or, but I think that that's where an amazing multidimensional mindset coach comes in really handy.
Yeah.
Um, right.
Of
But I think
course.
that right because how do we step into that either or space or step out of it? Because I think it's human nature that we all experience our physical reality and we go, oh my gosh, like this is happening right now.
Hmm.
So how do we get out of that internal dialogue of why is this happening to me?
Mm.
No, so it's really a mindset
Yeah.
shift. It
And
can
I
be,
agree absolutely. I'm going to interrupt again because I want to really step my foot on it and insist on that. Sometimes it's really impossible to do on your own.
yes,
Sometimes you need the help of somebody who has been there before and has studied. And so, yeah, just like you were saying, a multidimensional mindset coach is, because we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we are so engulfed in the it's all happening to me situation, poor little me, that there is no way that you can't be both on your
right,
own unless you
right.
get some help. And really, um, I've experienced that myself so much as not as a coach, as a coachee, a few years back, where I could feel myself going up and down. Although I don't like the idea that it's not up and down, but going from one vibration to another vibration, going in and out of alignment all the freaking time until I got some help. I got somebody who was there to remind me, basically, hey, remember who you are. And that is so useful because I strongly believe we don't know what we don't know. And the programming has got a strong pull, very strong pull. So I'm guessing that's why you created the ZenFlow OS program.
It is, and I do want to share one last little
Oh, sure. I love stories.
bit with you because I think part of, when we're in the thick of things, when we're in the middle of feeling ourselves in this lower vibration and feeling separate, not even victimy, we don't even have to, dive down into that low, low vibration of like super duper victimhood. But for, all of us human beings, there's an ebb and flow to life, and these challenges come to us or we attract them to us really so we begin to understand ourselves better. And so I think that when we're in that lower vibration, holding on to a little bit of love, a little bit of self-compassion, a little bit of grace, and really giving ourselves a space to breathe and allowing, as you say, to just sort of be in that space because that too does pass.
Mm,
For those of us that really do experience extreme, difficult, saddening, traumatic circumstances, I think that grace and self-compassion really, really matter. We
yeah.
don't have to force ourselves out of that low vibration. But when we have those glimmers, when we have those little whispers come back from our soul to remind us, like, allow the reminders to kind of
Mm,
seep back in when you're ready. And I think that that's a really great way to, kind of end that part of our conversation. Like, if you're feeling up and down and in and out and in between, how do you come back to your own center just a little bit at a time with
mm,
grace and with flow and with self-love and compassion?
yeah, absolutely. Um, and then one day, for me, it was like really one day there was no excuse, let's put it this way, in my mind. And I kind of every day I knew, and I still do, that everything is a choice. Um, and that means that I'm both responsible for everything, uh, which sometimes can feel heavy, but also that I'm responsible for everything, which sometimes can feel amazing, because that
And
means that I can
empowering.
change everything. Yeah, exactly. Empowering, because I'm responsible for everything. And there's so many circumstances in my life that I can now go back to and say, hey, this was a choice. Everything was a choice, actually. Um, Now I make choices that are good for me, but sometimes I did the choices that were bad for me, but still there were choices. Um, and that for me was the day I discovered that, or I was fully convinced, not I discovered, the day I became fully convinced that everything is my choice. Well, then, the sky's the limit, basically.
It's an amazing feeling. And I think it kind of goes back to this idea of alignment or misalignment. When we make choices out of alignment, what's true for us, it does feel amazing and empowering, and it absolutely changes the way that we see ourselves and our reality. And oh gosh, did I lose this train of thought? Because I think it might have been brilliant.
You're
I
gonna find it
do
again.
I think what I really am kind of getting at here is this. We are all sovereign souls.
Mm,
Whatever we choose and whatever feels true for us may not feel true for the rest of the world. A lot of us make decisions based upon what other people will
mm,
think of us, our family, or we will feel judged. And I think that the truth of who we are, when we're in alignment with the truth of our soul and our purpose and our passion and what feels deeply resonant for us, is really all that matters.
yeah,
That's the choice.
yeah.
The choice, and no one else can answer that question for each of us as individuals.
Mm,
And
yeah,
none of us are really, I mean, for sure, I can speak about this in American culture. We're not raised that way, but I think that this is a human
yeah.
experience.
No, I think so
We
too.
humans definitely want to kind of make sure that, we get approval or we feel good for the people around us. And
Mm,
that keeps
mm,
us away from making the choices that are
yeah.
truest for us with a
And I'm
capital.
gonna go one step, not deeper, but one step more annoying, I think, and add that sometimes we have internalized so much of the exterior judgment that it becomes me judging me before anyone else is even
Right.
interested in, so that the thing never ever gets to see the light of day, because I've already decided in my head that what's going to happen with it, and so I've self-judged based on my belief that somebody else is going to judge, and that I don't even need anyone else to judge me anymore. I've done the whole thing on my own, and for me sad that's sad, because it's like, oh gosh, people spend very little time judging other people. You know why? Because they're very, very selfish. And that's good. That's good, because they care more about their own lives than about mine.
Right.
So why don't I do the same and just,
Right.
um, it
People
makes
are
life
busy.
so much easier.
People are busy and people are thinking of themselves. And I think it gives us a lot of, it's very liberating
Mhm.
to really focus on who we are
Yeah,
and what is best for
yeah.
us. And that really is alignment. And I do want to say this just a little bit about creating our reality in terms of the science of it. And then
Hmm.
I would love to talk about ZenFlow. And we are talking about ZenFlow right now. We just haven't called it that yet because it really fundamentally is about alignment. I remember taking physics when I was about 20 years old, and I learned about this idea called superpositioning. And the idea of superpositioning is physicists were observing electrons, and every time they looked at the electron, it would disappear. And shortly thereafter, this idea of superposition, well, when I learned it, superpositioning was this idea of, oh my gosh, when we observe an electron, it moves into a different dimension. And why am I bringing that up? Because I was completely floored by this idea of something that I intuitively have felt my whole entire life, where when I would be in a dream state, I could tell that I was leaving my physical body and traveling to other worlds and other dimensions. So when I learned about the physics and the superpositioning, I thought, oh my gosh, like me flying around the universe is actually based in science.
Hmm.
And so, if we are mind, body, and soul, if we are made up of energy and light, which we are, that is fundamental to being human, we also are participating in using our energy and our light to shift and change reality all the time. We
Yeah,
come and we go. And that is really like leaning into the idea of creating our reality from a quantum level.
yeah,
Because at the end of the day, we are quantum particles living in this beautiful, unified quantum field. So we very much, as human beings, are, and I say this all the time, but fundamentally and scientifically, it's true. We really are powerful co-creators of our reality.
yeah.
We're moving things all the time. And I know most everyone has heard of the butterfly effect. It's kind of, in that vein.
Yeah, now for
So
me
it's
it's
real.
it's even more than the butterfly effect. It's actually um, the idea that we are locally but also globally, because light is not right here right now, it's everywhere. um, we are doing we are participating in the co-creation of the universe with everybody else, including planets, animals, whatever you want to call it. That means we have a responsibility there too, because what are we participating in creating? A universe where human beings are feeling bad about themselves? Do I want to be participating in that? Not only for myself, of course, for myself, I want to feel good. So I'd rather not, but also as a social, let's put it this way, responsibility, or as an ecological one. What is my participation? Am I adding light, or am I adding shadow to the general recipe? To the
I agree. And
to the
it
general
kind of,
salsa.
right. And I think it kind of goes back to the very beginning of our conversation when I was talking about this idea of alignment and how good it is to be aligned, because when we are being or leaning into or becoming, and I want to be very careful about how I say this, because our souls are eternal and expansive and already perfect and all knowing. Right. And so we're
Yeah,
always, in my opinion, the consciousness around that is to return home to that vibration as much as we possibly can while we're here on the planet being human. So the idea of being human is never about perfection. That's not what we're aiming for. We're just aiming for a little bit each day, nudging and like getting a little bit closer to expressing ourselves authentically, aligning with that higher vibration of our own wisdom, our own purpose, and that higher vibration of soul. And when we do that, even though it seems selfish, what we're really doing is we are raising the vibration of this collective consciousness in
Mm.
every way. So it's really a win-win. So when we're tuned into who we are, and I know Isaiah, definitely tell me what your thoughts about this are, but I do believe how I was raised and growing up, we were taught to really never think about ourselves. Like, who are you? Like, you can't do that. Why are you being selfish? It's not about you. And I would say, in my old age and wisdom, it definitely is. It
Yeah,
definitely is about me. And for you, it's about you. And for every listener, it's about them. Because when we are intentional about our own evolvement and self-realization, and it goes back to what you were saying as well. We're helping other people. We
yeah,
already know that we're in service. We already know to the planet, to other people, to the collective consciousness. So it definitely is a win-win to
yeah. But
be
obviously,
intentional.
no. In I don't think I was raised. The word selfish was basically one that was always used in a derogatory term. Always, always.
Right,
There was no good um, attitude around being selfish at any point, and it took me years to just plus I'm an only child, so everybody was saying to me, oh, of course you're selfish because you're an only child, stop being so selfish. And I was like, yeah, okay. Because I was a child and I was programmed, sorry. And it took me years, and I think it's yeah, again, it makes me sad because there is no other way but to be selfish, because where in the name of the whole universe, where else could I be but inside my own body, inside my
right,
own head, inside my own soul, basically. So if I have any intention of having any power on anything, from me to the vast universe, I need to be in a place of power, right? To If I intend to exercise any power, to use my power, I need to be in a place where I have some power. And there is no other place but me. Because if I'm in
right.
your place, if I try to think to make you lift your hand, you know what? You're not going to. If I try to make me lift my hand, look, it's working. My hand is up now. So for me, it was really this realization that selfishness means that actually is this is the place of power. Plus, you add to that, or I add to that, the idea that the only time of power is now, not yesterday, not tomorrow. And then we have complete selfishness as being the only way through to empowerment.
Absolutely. And it's really, it comes down to, like I said, being intentional.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to, it's not really, I guess it could be a little bit of a recipe for a way of living, but I think it's really just kind of leaning in a little bit more every
Mm.
day
Yeah. I
and,
love that.
being in the moment and remembering who you are and leaning into that higher vibration of love and joy. There's so abundance and joy go hand in hand. And it's a really beautiful way to be completely entangled in the quantum field. It can't be any other way anyway.
Mm.
Why not choose to be that as much as possible?
Mm.
And like I said, make sure in those down moments and those lower vibe moments and the moments of feeling separate or less than, just give yourself a little bit of a break and the higher vibe will return.
Yeah.
One powerful, beautiful song can
Yeah.
be transformational.
Yeah. Do you have advice on how we can help ourselves when we are feeling low? Let's put it this way. So you say one beautiful song. I have. Why am I saying that? Because I have a list. I created a list for myself of things that would help me shift my vibration when I feel very low. So sometimes I will give myself permission and say, okay, you know, okay, I'm feeling shit today. Fine, one day, okay. But then after a couple of hours or one day, I'm not happy there. So I want to be somewhere else. And so I made a list for myself of the things that I know will bring me somewhere else. Singing is very, very high on my list indeed. But there are, other things, big things and small things. And when I talk with my clients, I highly recommend they make this list and make the list when you're happy, when you're in the flow, not when you're out of it. Um, so do you have any advice of that sort, or is it just my crazy ideas of making lists?
Well, I think it's amazing, and I'm on that crazy idea bandwagon with you. And I do have to say, I have a morning ritual journal that I can gift to everyone, and I will send you the link for that. And it's just really a way of, and here's a very simple, and I may have shared this with you before. When you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, who do I want to be today?
Mm.
How do I want to feel today? What do I want to do today? And I think that that kind of is the way to wake up and feel like you're leaning into who you are, who you would like to be, and how you want to feel, and then what you'll do to kind of stay in that flow. But
Yeah,
I
but in
do
the
think,
questions you just said, which, I want to point out that those questions are you giving yourself the choice.
mhm,
So this is
exactly,
empowerment. Who
every
do I
day.
want to be? It's not who am I going to be or what's going to happen today or whatever. It's who do I want? So again, this empowerment via the choice of me deciding every morning, where do I stand in this particular day, and what is going to be my participation to my own and the general creation of the universe.
Absolutely. And I think that there are times when we have to lean in. If we are having a really crap day and then we just decide, I think I'm going to lay in bed for a moment and put the covers over my head, that is legitimate
That's
too.
fine. Yeah.
We can absolutely be in that lower vibe, and I think when we give ourselves permission to do that, like you say, I mean, the other day I was kind of having a crazy busy run around day. And then, I visited my mom, I'm taking care of her, and I have all this stuff going on. And I don't know, Mercury is in retrograde. So I was like running into things and dropping things and whatever I was doing. And I had this moment of saying to myself, oh my God, you just got to give in and just feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah.
And so I shed a tear and I cried for about 20 seconds and then I felt fine,
Hmm.
right? And I thought, and in my mind, as I gave myself permission, I was thinking, I wonder how long you're going to cry for. Just give yourself a break, take a breather, settle down. And it literally, once I gave permission and I gave my body permission to shed a tear, I bounced right back.
Yeah.
It was amazing. And I do want to say that I think that when we're intentional about nurturing our vibration, we begin to notice that we get back into that space
Yeah.
much more
Much
quickly.
faster.
We
Yeah.
recover much more
Yeah.
quickly. I was even surprised that I literally cried for less than a half of a minute. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was all that it took.
Yeah.
So I allowed my body and everything to feel and like get back into alignment. And then it was done.
Yeah. I'm
It's
going to add
profound.
something to my crazy list making. I also have a list of things that will make me cry. So
I
when I
love
need
it.
to cry, I have a list of songs that will make me cry at every time, or movies, or extracts of movies. And so when I need to cry, when I feel this thing that there's too much, they need to get out, I have a list crying song, a song of crying, a list of crying songs or crying things.
I
Uh,
actually do too.
and I
I
think
know.
that's very useful. actually.
It's amazing.
Because
I
sometimes
just was,
I don't know why I'm feeling like this, and I don't want to go into shrinking myself, kind of
right.
examining. No, I don't have an hour to psychoanalyze myself, and sometimes it's useless also because it's not about understanding why I feel bad. It's about stopping that feeling, and part of stopping it is very rarely repressing it, and very often, just like you said, giving myself permission to
Permission to live it
experience it,
out.
and then usually it's quite short.
I agree. And I think the thing about psychoanalysis and intellectualizing what we're experiencing and how we're feeling is one tiny little piece of this human experience.
Hmm.
I think we were very heavy into 4D energy for a very long time, that you have to think your way out of something, but really feeling our way out of something is so profound and so powerful.
Yeah. Plus, we touch the other us the other side of this coin is that emotions need to move. So if we try to repress them and say no, I'm not gonna, I don't want to be sad. No, I'm not this sad person. I'm gonna la la la,
Right.
or I'm going to be in a rage because I'm too sad to be actually sad. Um, that means that they stick around for much longer, usually.
And our
When
cells hold on to that
yeah.
energy. Our
Hmm.
cells are extremely brilliant. They hold on to that vibration.
Yeah.
It doesn't go away. We're just using our mind to play a
Yeah.
trick.
I was
So,
very, very lucky. I realize now at the ripe age of 57 to have met along my childhood, even some people who, out of experience and not out, experience as in life experience, taught me things that I'm now understanding in very, very profound spiritual teachings. I had one of my father's friends. My father used to take me to work when I was 5, 6 years old. He used to work in a sociology department of a university, and I used to go to work with him some days. And he had a colleague, and every time I arrived, he'd say, "Come with me, come with me." So here I go with this 40-something guy or 30-something guy, and there was a garden in the middle of the building. The top of the building wasn't a huge building like a New York style thing, but it was in Paris, and there was a garden in the middle, and I don't know how to call that. And so there we go, outside, and he holds my hand, and then he said, "We're going to do the screamy." I'm translating. And I said, "What?" "We're going to scream at the top of our lungs for no reason, for as long as we can." And there we go, me and him screaming, like screaming at the top of our lungs, as loud as possible for as long as possible, which was exhausting and exhilarating, absolutely exhilarating. It took me, so I used to do that, I don't know, every month or so he would take me to work and this would happen. And I've never seen the guy again. He died very young. And it took me years to realize that actually this was him using me as an emotional, you could do that with a child, but he would be, I'm guessing, they, he might have been in trouble for doing that as a grown up. Are you crazy or what? But with a child, he kind of was all right. For me, it took me years to understand that it was emotional release. Emotions that I didn't know I had, that I didn't know what they were. I was 5 years old, basically, but I was always in a good mood after that. Always. I remember being very joyful after that.
it's such an
So,
amazing release. And
yeah, so I would highly advise, if to our listeners, if you feel like you've got too much on your plate, go and scream it out. Don't scream it at your partners, please. Don't scream it
scream
in
in
a
a
cushion
pillow.
either. No, not even. Go outside. The trees won't mind, and the vastness of the sky will take it. So much. I highly recommend.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I'm not sure why I'm going to say this spirit is moving me, and it's definitely not as cathartic as scream therapy. But I heard this parable the other day, and I'm sure many of your listeners may have heard about the parable of the two arrows. And it really is the story of you get hit by an arrow and it's painful. And then the second arrow is really the arrow that you begin to get attached to energetically. So it's not like if you could just let the pain go from the first arrow, then you don't have to deal with the emotional pain and the memory of that first arrow
Mm.
striking you. And so really it's the second arrow that gets us into that space of ruminating,
Mm.
self-doubt, staying fixed on and attached to a life experience that you could essentially just let go and release.
So basically, we've been talking about Zen flow without talking about Zen flow
Yeah,
because what you just said is flow, right?
exactly.
Don't hold on to the negative things for dear life. Just let them go because emotions are meant to go. And the shit thing is everything is moving and changing all the time. So it's basically us that are creating the issue when we hold on to bad experiences, to bad breakups, bad limiting beliefs or beliefs about ourselves that are I don't want to say limiting, but the I don't know how you'd say that um, derogatory or pejorative or
Yes,
some kind of
self-deprecating.
yeah, self-deprecating. Thank you. Sorry, sometimes my English gets lost in
I think your
translation.
English is beautiful. And humans have a way of we really like to ruminate on things.
Yeah,
And and I think that and I do want to just mention the biology of rumination, right? We do have neural pathways that biochemically we can get, I'm going to use the word in quotes, addicted to the biochemistry of the way that we think about things. And
mm,
so once we get on that path of it feeling really good to go down a neural pathway where we feel like we are victims or we feel like we're suffering or we are being self-deprecating, remember that is our brain in a neural
mm,
pathway, and an empowering thought at that neurobiologic level is exactly what you said. We
mm,
always have a choice. And
yeah,
as soon as we choose a different thought, a belief, or a story, or a paradigm, we are rewiring our brain.
yeah,
And it's such a beautiful
yeah,
thing. And it really goes to show, just how powerful we are as living beings on
yeah,
this incredible planet.
yeah. When I
None
was young,
of it is
I was a skier, but not the ski where you go downwards. The Nordic ski where you go
Oh, cross country, yeah?
cross country, and in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, there's a lot of people doing that kind of skiing. And so there are tracks that are, have been created by the previous skier who came earlier in the morning. So when you arrive, you can ski in these paths. That's very cool. They're very, very comfortable because it's easier. The tracks are already there. Now, the thing is, these tracks go where the previous skiers decided to go, not where I want to go, right? So if I follow those tracks, I can only go where other people have been before. If I want to go into this part of the forest on the right, then I have to get out of the tracks and I have to create my own tracks. And the first 2 or 3 meters of skiing in completely untouched new snow is very difficult. It takes a lot more of my muscle effort to create new tracks. But then once you've got this momentum, it's actually not that more difficult than being in the tracks that I was before. But I'm in the middle of the forest where no one has come before, and it's all brand new and beautiful and everything. So when I think about rewiring neural pathways, I always see this image of, yeah, it's going to take a little effort to just take that turn, but then the amazingness of being in this forest with, the sun coming in and there's no one and no one has come before. And it's my universe, basically. Um, so, voila, I just wanted to add this to imagery to
Well,
this.
and it's such a beautiful story, you're such a storyteller. And I love that. And I think that it's true because when you see this new forest, you open yourself up to the magic of the possibilities. I
Mm,
was kind of pondering the idea of, whimsy and wonder yesterday as a really high vibration, because that's where the magic and the serendipity all come in. And it is so, I think, so fundamental to this human experience. And most of us don't invite those energies and those
yeah.
words in. And they're profound. And again, of course, our conversation just continues to lean into ZenFlow. So I can talk about it if you'd like, but
Yeah, please,
we
please, please
have
do.
so I have this membership. It's called the Intentional Abundance Collective, and it's exactly what we have been talking about, but it didn't feel exactly aligned. The content doesn't really change, but it hasn't felt exactly aligned with where I was coming from,
Hmm.
because I I f- I feel as though this time around on the planet, part of my journey is to help my fellow lovely, amazing human beings get back into the duality and the nature of the duality of being human on the planet. So, masculine and feminine, work and play, light and, even dealing with the dark, right? So, the duality of this thing called human nature. And and I thought, well, what is this balance and this duality really about? It's really about the Zen of living. And so, with this idea of multidimensional mindset and alignment, I thought really what I'm talking about and really what I'm teaching is this idea of Zen flow. How do we get into this space of, moving with and not forcing, but just being in the flow of aligning with who we are, getting clear, making choices from that space, nurturing a higher vibration, and really confidently creating from soul. And so that is really what the Zen flow operating system is all about. It's just a really powerful way of working and living and being. And, for any heart-centered entrepreneur, definitely it's about a way to guide and direct everything that you're doing in your business,
Mm,
from deciding and creating and putting yourself out there and your offers out there. So it just feels really, really good and really integrated, and not, and you and I actually, I think, talked about this in your last podcast episode with me, really integrating masculine and feminine energies where
yeah.
we're not
Mm,
compartmentalizing the work that we're doing. And, for any spiritual, heart-centered entrepreneur, we get these amazing creative downloads, and we get into that flow and what we're going to put out there. And then we begin to create. And as soon as that action and the tech and all the real life, 3D bound stuff comes in, it can absolutely bring us to a halt, because it's just too much and the energy can be a little more masculine and logical and left-brained. And so really, from an entrepreneurial perspective, ZenFlow is really integrating these energies and understanding that we're just living in flow and a part of the quantum
mm.
field. None of it is separate.
Yeah,
And
no,
so that's kind of the,
I'm happy that you brought back the idea that it's also a business strategy. ZenFlow is also a business strategy. It's not just a
yes.
living strategy, but it doesn't stop where I open when I open the door to my office. And for entrepreneurs, it's so often that I see the weight of the third dimension, let's call it this way, is literally halting the creative flow. And it's I find that really sad, actually, because this is also a story that this is heavy. And for some time I used to teach tech because I happen to be very good at it, because I have fun, I play with it, I consider it's a game. So, and I'm pretty sure that I'm right. even if I'm wrong, it doesn't matter. I believe that it's fun, so it becomes fun as we,
Right.
So the it's literally entrepreneurs shooting themselves in their foot when they stop the creative, when they halt because of this. Oh, the energy is getting heavy, the masculine, blah blah blah, and it's a story again. It's a story that it's a limiting belief, actually.
It is. It's actually, it is a limiting belief. And I do think that for particularly women entrepreneurs that are very connected to source and have that, spiritual heart-centered way about being in the world, it's really important to remember that for all of us, we are all embodying the divine masculine and feminine energies inside of us. We're not just one thing, we're all things.
Mm.
And really, like ZenFlow was really about getting into the flow and understanding the dual nature of who we are and how we can make very conscious choices. And you were saying this when you were talking about your cross-country skiing. And I could share about this. I think right now that the window is probably right. Embedded in the ZenFlow operating system is my 5C framework for just sort of like consciously creating your reality or your business or abundance or whatever. And of course it begins with connecting. And I do think I shared this with you. And so once we connect to soul and once we connect to our truth with a capital T, we get very clear about
Mm.
who we are not, what we want, what we don't, and then whatever creative downloads are coming to us that we really think as a spiritual entrepreneur, what is actually monetizable, right?
Mm.
Because money is energy. It's just a part of that flow.
Yeah.
And, money is a really fabulous freeing currency. And so when we get clear on those creative downloads, then we can begin to take action from a soul fueled confidence that
Mm.
really stays aligned with our true essence, with our soul, with our inner core. And it really does all happen in that beautiful divine feminine space. And then we kind of integrate it into kind of bring in the divine masculine and that solar plexus fiery energy. And I do want to pause right here because you were so lovely the last time that we talked to remind me that there is a Greek goddess that is also very much a part of that fiery solar plexus energy that I often describe as masculine. But there's goddess energy in there as
But
well. And I,
there is masculine and feminine everywhere, as you
right,
were just like
exactly,
you were saying, because
exactly.
the solar plexus is also, if I'm going to stick to Greek deities, is also the place where Apollo lives. So
Isn't that beautiful? I mean, it's so beautiful. And so, so we're not separate. So taking action and confidently bringing things into the world is exactly what we should
mm,
be doing.
mm,
And the beautiful part, it goes with the idea of getting clear, and this is very entrepreneurial, as you well know, getting clear, getting focused. And there's so much energy and clarity and focus
yeah,
that we build momentum. And that is very much a part of your skiing analogy,
yeah,
right? So
mm,
now we're building momentum and now we're creating new paths and new products and new things to provide service or impact for others in a really beautiful, flowy
yeah.
way that doesn't knock us out of balance to the point where, we're really, really, really off track from
No,
our
because we
our
can
goal
we
and our
can
passion.
also at any point we can go back to the usual tracks and rest for a while, or just
Right.
sit down in the forest and take a break. But I
I
think
love
that
it.
we don't have to be forcing anything, as you were saying. We can flow with Zen.
Exactly. And it really is about flow and it really is about, taking the time as in an entrepreneurial context, really take the time to get into that beautiful deep work where we can work for 2 hours at a time and begin creating what we want to create, and then kind of back out of that deep work and get into like a little bit of a stillness and just kind of go back and forth, right? Just like you said with those tracks and skiing. Go off the path, get back on the path. You know what it's really about maintaining the energy of what feels really good for us,
Yeah.
whether we're working or whether it's just about living a really amazing, powerfully creative life.
Yeah, and when I'm guessing that thanks to your program, we can learn to use that flow also in a way that does not lead us to burnout. So not too much, because the creative sometimes is overwhelming as well. So it's, it's sometimes finding this balance between not enough and too much, but finding where I am in this river of flow that is comfortable also. And that means that I can flow the distance, let's put it this way, because yeah, entrepreneurial journeys are not short. You need to be there in a year doing the same
Right.
things, or, and I think that this is really important, that we don't overextend our feminine or our masculine, but we find this balance. So yeah, the program is in the form of a membership, you were saying.
It's a membership.
So
And I
yeah,
do
the
want
link
to
to
say,
this will be under the video or the audio,
yeah,
please.
yeah,
So go
yes.
check it
And
out, listeners.
yes, it's a monthly membership, and there's a lot of amazing things in there just to keep you on track with everything that Isaiah and I have been talking about with, the idea of the divine masculine and feminine and staying in flow and really creating balance and this really lovely state of being and doing and the choices you make and how much power you have as a co-creator of your reality. And so it's really about, shifting like your wealth consciousness, the way that you work, the way that you create, the way that you live. So you're in a state of, you know, really aligning with who you are and staying in that higher vibration where you are attracting opportunities, serendipity, whatever it is that you would like to attract and become and create.
That's great. I can't wait. So we've been talking for over an hour. So I'm going to have to stop us there, but we have another episode coming. And one of the questions that I think I'm going to be asking you is about the 5C things, because I've heard the
Ooh,
5C things. So, but we'll see. You listeners, thank you so much for being here. You have to stay put until our next episode to have more of Sheri and these amazing conversations. I'm having so much fun. I want to
I
thank
am
you so
too.
much for coming. And
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
yeah, I
everyone.
will see you soon for a fourth conversation. For now, we have no specific topic yet organized, so you'll have to trust that we're going to flow with this, right? We're
We're
going
going
to
to
Zen
flow.
flow with this.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much, Sheri, for coming, and thank you so
Thank
much for
you. Thank
listening
you
to
for
us,
having me.
everyone. And well, I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.